From the Cityscape Bar in the Holiday Inn Mart Plaza, Chicago, I'm Natasha Korecki, and this is Off Message, a Sun-Times weekly political show. Joining me this week, we have Becky Schlickerman, a Sun-Times reporter who's also our medical marijuana guru, investigative reporter Dan Mihalopoulos, and from Springfield, Jon Seidel. Let's talk a little bit about medical marijuana and jump right in. So Governor Quinn leaves office Monday afternoon. He does not do what everyone was waiting for him to do. He punts on this, which is issuing the licenses for medical marijuana. What is going on right now in the community that was waiting for him to do something?
I think the people in the community are very concerned. So there's different aspects of this. There's the patients who are desperately waiting to be able to use medical marijuana, and they can't use it until these business licenses are awarded and the medical marijuana is actually grown and sold. So there's that concern. There's people in the business community who've spent thousands and thousands, maybe millions of dollars to get their applications in to be growers and sellers, and now they don't know what's going to happen with that investment.
Was there a deadline, or was this sort of an artificial expectation that when Quinn left office he was going to do this?
The Quinn administration said from the beginning, we're going to issue these licenses before the end of 2014. And they gave themselves this self-imposed deadline and didn't meet it. The problem is this is a pilot program, so the more time you wait to get the program actually started, the less time people will actually have to use the product and make money off of the product.
So, Jon Seidel, just to go to you on what was Rauner's, Governor Rauner's take on how he would handle the situation now?
It sounds like Governor Rauner just wants his staff to go in and take a look at everything that Governor Quinn's staff did with this and find out where this was left and whether or not they need to go back and start over. I think that maybe the expectation on Governor Quinn's staff was that, Rauner's people could just come in and pick up where they left off, but I don't think that that's the plan. I think they want to take an entire look at this and see if maybe if they need to start from scratch.
You were also at Lou Lang's press conference. Can you tell us a little bit about the tone from Democrats who support Quinn? He was pretty disappointed.
He was pretty angry, yeah. And he said that Quinn may have doomed this program by not handing out or awarding these licenses before he left office. Becky mentioned the self-imposed deadline by the Quinn administration, but and as she said, there's a practical deadline here too. I mean, there are people who have invested thousands of dollars in this program, and now already the government is dragging its feet, not doing what it said it was going to do. And how long are these investors going to stick around to put this money into this program? They may start to walk away.
And just quickly, I mean, it's not just the business side. I mean, you covered a story last week. You described this family whose son was in desperate need of this medication.
So there's a family like this family in Mount Prospect whose son has an epilepsy disorder, and they desperately want to try a form of medical marijuana to see if it will help with his seizures. They can't do that until the program is in place, and they're desperately waiting to use it as an option to treat their son.
Yeah.
That's all very moving, but let me put a different note into this conversation, and that is who really is going to benefit from this program, from these licenses that Quinn was going to issue. I don't know that that's ever been completely clear. There hasn't been medical marijuana before, and I don't know how much longer it's going to take for Governor Rauner to get up to speed and to issue licenses. But I do think that Lou Lang protests too much. It reminds me a little bit of how irate he became when Governor Quinn, then Governor Quinn, blocked his efforts to get a casino, another casino in the state of Illinois, which, again, these are things when you're introducing a new industry that is subject to government approval in a state with the history that Illinois has. I don't think you can be too careful about seeing who is trying to benefit from this program. There have been some great articles by my colleagues here, Becky, foremost among them, that started to answer that question. And in some cases, I think that there are some questionable associations there.
In another note, we did see the Rauner administration take some action this week. They're saying they're not going to let go of Bob Morgan, who is running the medical marijuana program. So that's brought some relief to people who are worried about continuity and what a new administrator for the program would mean in terms of further delays and further.
Rauner had said during the campaign even that he didn't like the secretive process. Do you expect under a Rauner administration that this will become more open?
I mean, they probably have to change the law to do that, right? I mean, it's under the law that it's become so secretive. But Rauner did mention earlier this week that they had some suspicions that some of Quinn's staff had left and were lobbying and trying to get involved in contracts. Now, it's been pointed out it was a blind process, but still, that concern is out there. So they might move to change that.
And just circling back to Governor Quinn, having been in Springfield earlier this week, they just felt like there was a lot of just very negative feelings about his departure. Did he leave on a high note? Did he leave on a sour note?
I think he left on a sour note, especially compared to the legacy that he had over the years. Some would say it's a legacy that was built up by us in the media. I think, though, that generally there was a confidence that he was not a crook like his predecessors. I don't think there still is any evidence that he was a crook. I just think that it was beneath him, for instance, to take his campaign manager and engineer his appointment to a $160,000 a year job with a 2-year contract that is like a football quarterback's contract. You got to pay him no matter whether you want to get rid of him or not. And Rauner, I think, should have had the prerogative to put in somebody at the head of that agency.
John, can you talk a little bit about this first week? We have a new governor who was inaugurated. What's the tone that Governor Rauner is trying to set now in Springfield, and is he getting it across?
Everyone just wants to get along. We're all just working together. The governor met with the 4 legislative leaders. They came out. Everybody was very congenial. We had the inauguration of the Senate and the House yesterday. Lots of pledges of bipartisanship, but every now and then there's a little bit of a dig or you see the rift kind of revealing itself. Senate President John Cullerton mentioned during his speech yesterday that we need to raise the minimum wage in Illinois. You had lots of Democrats applauding and Republicans staying very still, but Governor Rauner nodded when Cullerton said that. So far, I think we're in a little bit of a honeymoon period. The gloves are on as opposed to off, and we're just waiting for maybe Governor Rauner to make the first move here.
So we saw a series of executive orders from Governor Rauner, including, I am going to be so ethical, ethics. Have we heard this before from other governors?
Well, I definitely heard it from Mayor Emanuel the first day that he came in to office in 2011. The mayor made his first order of business executive orders regarding ethics, and these are natural things for governors to do. But certainly he's going to come in and he's going to want to look in a state with the problems that we've had that you covered before in your previous beat at the federal building. You know, how many of the politicians we cover at city and state and county government do we end up seeing at 219 South Dearborn? And Rauner wants to show that he's different because he's already rich maybe, or because he's just a nicer guy.
And of course, many people in Springfield this week reminded us about how then Governor Blagojevich, when he entered, he fired people, he issued a hiring freeze, and he required everyone undergo ethics training. And I believe later on in the trial, the ethics officer said that Blagojevich himself never underwent that training. Might be shocking. Okay, well, let's wrap up with quotes of the week. Why don't we start with you, John?
My quote of the week comes from John Cullerton after Governor Rauner gave his inaugural speech and mentioned that he wanted to put a freeze on non-essential spending. Cullerton said, "I don't know what that means. I don't know if he does either, but it sounds great." And I think that just shows, he had been questioned quite a bit about that, and the answer kept changing, and that's kind of eventually what came out. And I think that shows a little bit of the tone here.
Right. Go ahead, Dan.
I'm going to move to the next upcoming main event, the mayoral election. The coach, Mike Ditka, endorsing and giving some money to Bob Fioretti. Our colleague in the sports department, Dan Cahill, asked the coach why, and he said anything is better than what we have. So not a fan of the mayor.
But he was a fan of Governor Rauner, right?
He was a fan. He did a commercial with Governor Rauner, but that was after he was a fan of Governor Quinn, too. So the coach generally goes on the conservative side. So Fioretti being a progressive, it's an odd team.
Okay. Becky?
I'm going with Lou Lang on Quinn. After Quinn punted the licenses, he said some very sick people were hurt.
Okay. And I'm going to circle back with the Governor Renner's first press conference in the, actually in his office. All the reporters are there, and he comes in and he says President Cullerton had asked him if he should refer to him as His Excellency. And he said, no, just calling me governor is fine. So I'm really glad he cleared that up. So we don't.
And they called him His Excellency.
There you go. I'm sure that's how we will all refer to him.
Yes.
Okay, with that, thank you very much to our panel, and thank you for joining us this week on Off Message.